Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Homesteading Off the Grid and another morning ramble. Today's ramble is about an annoying neighbor, rattlesnakes, and golden hammers because they're all related. How are they related? Well, I guess it has to do with the fact that you cannot mend a fence that never existed, so don't waste your time. And what's that about? Well, it's about loose cows on the road. So if you're a loyal subscriber, you've been around for at least a day or two, you remember yesterday, Dearly and I looked out the windows of our dining room and noticed cows in the road, right out in front of Mr. J's parents' property. You know, guys, I think a lot of you may have forgotten a lot of the original story here. Mr. J, the annoying neighbor who was run off with a crayon forevermore, this is at least a year ago now, does not live across the street from me. His parents do. He lives 3 miles away up the road. He's not even anywhere close. So that's what made it extra super creepy when he was harassing us for over a year because we didn't let him take the hay off of our land that he'd been taking for 1,000 years according to him, and that he was going to continue to take for 1,000 years according to him, as he told us first introduction that the house might be ours and the land might be ours, but by God, the hay was his, okay? Now, anyway, we saw the cows. We did the right thing because it wasn't about him. It was about cows who were in the road. So we ran out. You probably saw the video. Well, so I'm talking about it. I was never just even going to talk about it, but you guys are like, what happened? Did Mr. J say thank you, blah, blah, blah? Yes, he did. Here's what happened. We went out. Dearly, as you know, kept the camera, ushered the cows off the road, made sure they stayed out of the road so no cars would hit them. I sprinted about a quarter of a mile away to a house where I know there's a guy that does have a relationship with Mr. J. Got him to call Mr. J. I sprinted back and stayed there until I thought Mr. J had come. There was a car coming around the bend. It looked like his car. Thought it was him. I went towards it. Turns out it wasn't. It was a rubbernecker, a gawker, somebody looking to see why we were over there. Just as that car passed, our son came out of the house yelling for us. He was yelling in the video looking for me. So when he looked out and saw me, he starts running through the field barefooted. And it was wet. It was rainy. You guys saw it. So I gave Dearly the paper. We'd gotten the newspaper from Mr. J's parents' newspaper girl, so that she wouldn't drive her car up there and scare the cows off into the next county. So I went up to take care of Daniel. Daniel and I watched through the windows. Just as we got in the house, Mr. J came. Dearly handed off the paper. He got in his car maybe less than a minute later, went up the road. Dearly was still there. I didn't know what was going on. About maybe 3 minutes later, he comes back, and a guy in a truck behind him. Dearly comes back to the house. And then so I watched as through the window, and as they got these two guys, it's like one guy led the first cow, the other started following. Mr. J went in his car up the road. The cows went up the road. I don't know if they were going up to a gate up on the upper edge of his field or whatever. His parents own about, I think, close to 20 acres over there. So anyway, Dearly's in the house. And I say, well, did he at least say thank you? And she said, yeah, he said thanks. I said, who was that other guy? She said, I don't know. He didn't even tell me his name. I said, did he say thanks? She said no. So anyway, yes, Mr. J said thanks. Dearly gave him his paper. We left it at that. Now, a lot of people had commented, oh, this is great. Maybe you guys can be friends now. Maybe you can mend a fence, work on more neighborly relations. Listen, no. No. Guys, a big part of my healing process and being in a better place process, and I think the reason why a lot of you folks are here and watch these videos is because you've been through it too. You've been through the ringer when it comes to toxic relationships. Guys, one simple act of doing the right thing does not equate to, hey, let's just dive headfirst into a relationship that never existed with someone we know is toxic. That's like saying, since I haven't had a drink for several years, I may as well walk into the bar down here and have a beer. Guys, no, we have no interest in, okay, there was never a fence in the first place, and you can't mend a fence that didn't exist. You would have to build a fence, and fence building, like bridge building, is something that needs to be done by both sides. And do you really want to get to where that bridge may be leading you if you're taking a look at building that fence? Okay, now here's where rattlesnakes and golden hammers come into play. You guys have all heard this story. I know you've heard the story about the snake. There's a venomous, poisonous snake. It's lying in the field in the middle of winter and it's frozen stiff. It's got a rattle on a tail, so it's obviously a rattlesnake. Okay, this woman's walking through the field. She's out for a walk in the snow and she sees the snake and she says, oh, that poor thing. She looks, she notices a rattle on its tail, and she says, well, it's a rattlesnake, it's dangerous. But she says, you know what, it's not dangerous now, though. It's in a position, something's going on here that's caused it to not be dangerous at this single point in time. And then, of course, it's the colder temperatures. Snakes are cold-blooded creatures, so the thing's stiff and it can't move. So the woman picks the snake up, she puts it inside her jacket up against her chest, and she says, I'm going to just carry this snake to safety somewhere. I'm going to help warm it up so it doesn't die, get it in a better spot, better place. So the snake thaws out. As soon as it can move, it bites her. It injects its poison, and the woman is lying on the field, dying. And she says, how could you do this? You needed help. You were in trouble, and I helped you. I did something kind. I did the right thing in helping you, even though I knew you were dangerous. And the snake says, you stupid, stupid woman. You knew exactly what I was. This isn't my fault. It's yours. Okay? Now, you might be saying, oh, how cruel to compare Mr. J to a snake. You know what? That is cruel because he's, it's a personality type. There are certain personality types I have learned to avoid. Devil's advocates are a big one. I'm not going to waste my time hanging out with someone who's going to disagree with me just for the sake of disagreeing. Now, if it's someone who disagrees with me because they have a different view from a different angle, they can help me grow and they can help me see things from a different angle that's probably worth seeing. But when someone wants to be a devil's advocate just so they can look wise or maybe just because they like to argue, I'm not wasting my time. You've seen my beautiful bride. You've seen my darling son. 1 minute of happiness with them and with other. I have other friends. I've talked about some of them on the channel before. I'm not some loner that shut myself off from the world. I have one annoying neighbor that I ever had to run away with crayons. Anybody else that's ever come here is welcome to come back, and they do often. But I don't waste a minute with devil's advocates. They irk me beyond all irking extremes. Okay, flakes. If we make arrangements to do something, go somewhere, and you back out, I understand that. Things come up. But when you do it a second time, I'm starting to question it. You do it a third time, that's when I start saying, you know what? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm done. We're not making any more plans. I used the analogy here not long ago about my plumbing, how I happily paid a lot of money to get some pretty detailed plumbing fixed because I knew that by hiring professionals, they would come when they said they would do it, do what they said they would do, charge what they said they would charge. Same thing with the fence and the gate that you saw in the video yesterday, because I knew a guy, great guy, wonderful guy, but just couldn't commit. He'd say, well, I'll be there next week. I'll be there next week. Well, this went on for 6 weeks, almost 3 months. And then, no, we hired a professional. We overpaid. Well, we paid a premium, but the professional came out one day, gave us a quote, came out the next day, did the job. So devil's advocates, flakes, gone. Frenemies, gone. Who are frenemies? The people that act like they like you, but take little jabs at you to try to tear you down. What's the expression? They'll cut your head off to make themselves seem taller. Gone. So no, there will be no fence mending with Mr. J because a fence never existed. What happens if we see cows over there again? What if his cows get loose and come onto our property and come into our field? We're going to do the right thing. Guys, listen, like I said yesterday, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing, but just because you do the right thing doesn't mean you need to turn around and do the wrong thing. And that's in regard to self-preservation and entering a relationship that you know, it's like that snake in the field. Okay, the guy's a taker. He's a taker. He's spent a lifetime getting what he can get from others so he doesn't have to work to earn it himself. Um, and frankly, that's just not someone I want to associate with anyway. Because like I said in the original Annoying Neighbor in the Crayon video, I've worked for what I have. I believe you should work for what you have. I know a lot of people. Obviously, I mean 17,000 thumbs down. Obviously, a lot of people don't believe that. There are a lot of people who are very like-minded with Mr. J out there and take offense to me saying that. That's just mean and curmudgeon-y and just a bad thing to say. But we won't compare him to a snake, okay? He's not a devil's advocate. He's not, these other personality types. I mean, he may be a flake. I don't know. But I'll tell you, this is the story of the Golden Hammer now. He is someone in what little bit we had to do with him. I mean, he told us stories of him calling the police, or his sister or some sibling calling the police on him. Or a lot of people mentioned in the comments, a lot of people who did stick around to our channel after hearing that, you said that his concern was that I was going to report him for disability fraud because he thinks we have him on camera. He told us his own sister has reported him for disability fraud because she works and she sees him out here farming all day but getting a check. And so listen, this is the kind of guy that just, the Golden Hammer. Okay, this guy, he buys a construction company. He gets all of his old employees, or the employees of the previous company under old ownership, previous ownership. There's a foreman, okay, who just isn't very happy. So the new owner decides that he's going to buy new tool belts for the entire crew. Because when he first met the foreman was complaining about his tool belt. So this other guy that works with the foreman comes along the next day. He sees the new owner. He says, hey, Bob, we'll call the foreman Bob. Says, Bob doesn't like the new tool belts because the hammer holder's on the front. The old one, it was on the back. And he prefers the other way. And so the new owner says, hey, let Bob use his old tool belt. So, okay, Bob starts using his old tool belt, or he's told he can use his old tool belt. So, a few days go by, and there a lot of equipment needed replaced. So the new owner, he bought new nail guns because Bob, in particular, was complaining about the old nail guns. So this same guy, Bob's right-hand man, comes along, sees the owner, says, hey, Bob hates these new nail guns. They're just... He likes using hammers. He complained about the old nail guns because he liked the old days when we used hammers. He's, old school kind of guy. So the company owner, he says, okay, we're going to let Bob use a hammer. But he thinks a little bit more and he says, you know what? I really want to make this Bob guy happy. It seems as if maybe I'm rubbing him the wrong way. So he goes out and he buys a golden hammer. This is the most well-balanced. You could put this hammer on your finger like this right in the center and it would not go onto either side. Perfectly balanced, made out of actual gold. Gives it to Bob through the way of Bob's right-hand man. The next day, the right-hand man comes up to the owner and he says, hey, sir, I'm sorry, but Bob's not happy with this new hammer. He says the way the sun reflects off the gold, it just blinds him. He hit his thumb while he's trying to drive a nail with this hammer. He's just not happy. We got to figure something else out. And the owner looks at the guy and he says, Bob's just not happy. And so that's probably the best analogy I can use for Mr. J. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I barely know the guy. What I'm saying is I will not willingly and knowingly enter into a toxic relationship with someone where I know it stands to be dangerous and harmful to me and dangerous and harmful to my family based upon what little bit of experience I have in the real world, which just includes serving in a war, living overseas, traveling around the world a few times, being in association with a lot of people, and unfortunately, a lot of toxic people. and kind of having to go on this soul-searching journey where I said, you know what, enough's enough. I'm setting boundaries. People start towing across those boundaries, boom, I'm done with them. They won't be given another opportunity. I know that sounds cold. I know that sounds hard. But listen, folks, I mean, I kind of had to learn the hard way. And I'm tired. I've talked before about how if we don't, if we life is like full of classes, full of classrooms. And if we don't take, if we learn certain lessons, but they just don't take, we've got to go back and repeat the class. I'm not going to go back and repeat the class with Mr. J. After I firmly and rightly so said no, you know, I bought this property for me and my family and our uses. No, it took more than a year after that to get rid of this guy. This guy harassed us to no end. It took a year for that to stop. I'm not going to open the door and say, come on back in, Mr. J, and harass us for another year because I did the right thing and we got in touch with you when we saw these loose cows over here going up and down and out of your driveway and coming into the road. That would make me the same as that woman who picked up that snake and would later get bitten and then would try to blame the snake. She knew what she was picking up. I know what I'd be getting into, and I'm not doing it. So if you were hoping for a happier ending to this story because we saved some cows and maybe we would quote mend a fence, and I'm not making fun of anybody that said that, and I get your point, and I wanted to address it because some of you said I left you with a cliffhanger here. You can't mend fences that were never there. We would be opening, or, you know, like the flakes, people that backed out. I will never reschedule another appointment with a flake who's flaked out 3 or 4 times. And if I did, what would happen? They'd flake out again. So I would make plans to go do something with myself, my family, and the flake, and then boom, the flake never shows, or I have to reschedule plans with my family. Not going to do it. And no more than I would do that. I'm not going to go try to be buddies with a taker who's looking out for what can he get from everybody so he doesn't have to earn something for himself. I'm not going to walk into his life and say, hey, I'm going to be that guy you take from this time. No. So anyway, it's pretty early. It's still early. It's only like 5:37 right now. I'm getting this thing kind of out of the way soon. So I'm going to go in here and I guess drink more coffee, though if you've watched this, you'll probably agree that I've already had enough. But isn't that what life's about? Family, living, loving, laughing, and good coffee. All right, so thanks for being with us here on Homesteading Off the Grid. Hope you got something out of this. Again, I'm not bitter. I'm not a bitter, jaded curmudgeon. It's just I'm not stupid. I'm not stupid. I used to be that guy that would just be naive enough to just let those takers and users and flakes and devil's advocates, and not anymore. Learn the hard way, and I don't want to repeat the class. So you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time.